Netflix's Blood of Zeus has just released its third and final season, bringing its epic story to a close. While Blood of Zeus is by no means a perfect story, I do feel like they managed to bring the story and its characters to a satisfying conclusion. If you aren't familiar, Blood of Zeus follows the illegitimate son of Zeus, Heron, who is tasked with saving heaven and earth despite the interference of vengeful gods, titans, and other monstrous foes along the way. I think what I like most about this series is how well it fits in all of the other Greek mythology that I've grown up learning about. I've always enjoyed the Greek epic stories, and aside from Percy Jackson, it feels like modern media has shied away from tackling this mythos. Blood of Zeus, however, chronicles a classic Greek mythology setup, wherein Heron is the bastard son of Zeus, the product of an affair between a god and a human. Heron is raised with the most humble of upbringings, having to work extra hard just to get by. Once our story truly kicks off, Heron discovers that he is a demigod who can wield great power. Our story also follows Seraphim. Seraphim is the true definition of a Greek tragedy. He is also of noble birth, but is actually Heron's brother. Seraphim has no godly inheritance, but rather is cast out as a baby to die. He is brought up on the fringe of society and slowly corrupts his very soul on a path of vengeance. Early on in the story, he even becomes a demon himself by consuming the flesh of a giant. As a demon, he is responsible for many atrocities, including the murder of Heron and his own mother. Through the context of the story, Seraphim is directly set up to be an antagonist. However, I am left feeling sympathetic for him as he is a product of the gods meddling in his own life. Throughout the 3 seasons, Heron influences Seraphim's path, and we see him confront the pain he's caused and fight for a greater good. In this series, Heron's story is that of duty to moral justice in spite of the injustice that he himself faces. Meanwhile, Seraphim's journey is that of redemption, and it shines a focus on the question, no matter what you've done in the past, can you balance the scales by striving for good in the future? Can you truly be redeemed? While I'm not so convinced that ultimately Seraphim earned his own redemption, it would seem that the series does reward him with that outcome. The series closes to an embrace between him and his mother and his brother in the Elysium Fields, which is the Greek mythology version of getting into heaven. The series is also following many of the great god characters that we know throughout Greek mythology. Zeus, Hera, Hades, and Persephone all stand out as characters who received a majority of that character development. Outside of our main plot, I was most invested in Hades and Persephone. On paper, Hades, god of the underworld, abducts Persephone, the daughter of Demeter, goddess of agriculture, and makes her his queen. The abduction leads to grief and a barren earth, and ultimately Persephone and Hades find a shared existence, with Persephone spending part of the year in the underworld and the rest of the time with her mother, providing balance to the seasons. Beyond that is a tragic love story between these two that mirrors Romeo and Juliet. Although the world is against their union, they sacrifice and persevere to protect their family. A quote they repeat to each other throughout the series that is thematically representative of their entire plot is, "When two souls are destined to be together, nothing can separate them." They lean on this sentiment throughout the series to drive their actions, and it's an interesting one. I get that they're going for an emotional, impactful sentiment between the two of them. However, I feel like the quote just isn't super strong. It is getting at that if they can't be together in this life, their souls will find a way to get together in the next, which is a beautiful sentiment, but I feel like this show wanted it to have a stronger impact on me than it did. Zeus, while being shown to be a morally just character, is the reason for most of the problems within the story. He actively cheats on his wife Hera, and the product of that is Heron, who has to live his life in secret and suffer without any resources. In response to this, Hera sends Seraphim on his own path of darkness and targets Heron. All of the problems that we need to overcome in the story are kicked off by Zeus at the beginning of the series and his betrayal to Hera. By the end of the story, we do see Hera go on a similar journey to Seraphim, where she slowly sees the error of her ways and begins to strive for a redemption of sorts. Her conversation with Heron's mother in the Elysium Fields stood out to me as one of the more profound sentiments in the series. She went there seeking answers as to why, when Zeus has everything, power, kingdom, etc., did he choose a mortal woman over herself? The answer she receives is a surprising one, that Zeus wanted to be seen for just the person that he is, not for the role that he plays in the greater Olympic pantheon. This was the turning point for Hera's character and allowed for her to start gaining empathy and perspective within the story. The series culminates in an epic clash between Kronos, the leader of the Titans, and what's left of the Olympians. The final showdown is between Heron and his brother Seraphim against Kronos and his strongest Titan. Getting to see Heron and Seraphim work together throughout Season 3 was satisfying, and to the show's credit, it felt earned. They took small steps throughout the season to go from arch nemesis to true brothers. In the climax of the series, Heron is able to summon enough power to defeat the powerful Titan at the cost of his own life, opening a window for Zeus and the rest of the gods to take the advantage against Kronos and the rest of the army. Ultimately, it's Seraphim who deals the final blow, fulfilling the prophecy from Season 1. The series concludes with Heron reuniting with his mother in the Elysium Fields, along with Seraphim, ending on a note of forgiveness and ultimate redemption. I'm overall left feeling very conflicted by how the story concludes. On one hand, I recognize that they did close out every plotline that they set up, which I do give the series credit for. However, I felt that it left some plots feeling not fleshed out before we got to their inevitable conclusion. For example, Zeus's entire presence in Season 3 feels very lackluster and pale. I understand why they needed him sidelined until the end, but I didn't feel like narratively he was present enough to really feel like he mattered. I also feel like there could have been, and should have been, a big scene between Zeus and Seraphim, clearing the air, so to speak, between the two characters who have had a significant impact on each other's plot lines, but we haven't really seen them be able to talk it out. Hades and Persephone's plot was well developed throughout the series. However, towards the end, I think I would have appreciated a little bit more closure on what the character of Hades will be doing moving forward, especially in regards to his children. They make a point to include his children in the narrative, which on a surface level is just providing extra stakes for Persephone and Hades amongst their scenario. But because the children feel characterized, I feel like they were maybe hoping to do more with them. Towards the end of the season, they start to imply a romance between Heron and Alexia. While I love Alexia as a character and I would love to ship the two of them, I don't feel like the series did much work to develop their romance throughout its run. It was obvious that they were going to set these characters up with each other, but I don't feel a genuine connection or spark or something that would leave me really rooting for these characters. These may be more nitpicky details because I overall did really enjoy this series and I did have fun with its finale, but there's been one nagging detail that I just can't seem to shake, and that's Heron's ending. I understand his sacrifice, and I even agree with the choice to sacrifice this main character in order to wrap up the series and his character arc. However, his happy ending being reunited with his mother in the Elysium Fields just didn't feel like enough, especially when we got a glimpse at his potential future, his life with Alexia, and a child that he would bear. When we juxtapose those two endings, his reunion within the Elysium Fields just feels a little bit lackluster. Overall, I think Seraphim gets a lot more substantive development than any character in the series, including Heron. Heron is the definitive main character, but because he is so noble in all his storylines, he can fall a little bit flat. We always know that he's going to make the right decision, especially when compared to the tragedy that is Seraphim. Seraphim's plot lines just feel so much more conflicting, and therefore there's a lot more meat on the bones for us as a viewer to grip onto. At the end of the day, Blood of Zeus is a harrowing adventure that rivals the likes of any Greek mythology story. It is densely packed with references to other Greek epics and firmly fits within its world. There's even room for a potential spin-off story that takes place in the setting that has been established in this series, and if the creators chose to go down that route, I would gladly support it. Blood of Zeus is all about learning from your past mistakes, picking up the pieces, and moving forward with your head held high. Redemption is always on the table no matter what, and that is the note that this series chooses to end on. Overall, I had so much fun with the series. Season 1, 2, and 3 felt like a breath of fresh air. You know, it wasn't always the strongest storytelling, and the animation isn't the best animation that you're going to find out there, but it's a very solid story start to finish. And if you are someone who has ever enjoyed Greek mythology, I think that you'll have a lot of fun spending time in this world. That's going to bring this one to a close. This is probably a quicker video for me. You know, I do enjoy this series, but it's not the most dense thing in the world, so there's not too much to break down and discuss. What did you think of Blood of Zeus? Are you higher on it than I am? Are you lower on it than I am? I would love to get a conversation going down in the comment section. And as always, I appreciate any feedback or anything you want to let me know, any show recommendations or anything to make this experience better for you. As always, my name is Darius Cook, and remember that I love you.